Hello and welcome. Thank you for signing up to watching this webinar on issues surrounding weight loss. My name is Gloria Prest, and as you may know, I am a hypnotherapist and a psychotherapeutic counselor. The reason why I am focusing on weight loss at the moment is because although I have clients that come to me with different issues regarding stress or anxiety, phobias, mental blockages, getting over past traumas, the subject of weight loss seems to come out again and again and again with many different types of clients. Is something that affects quite a lot of people. We all seem to have this idea of how we want to look, and if we don't succeed in that, sometimes it affects us and confidence and all sorts. Some people actually, I have some clients that have an actual medical reason for needing to lose weight, and they find very frustrating the fact that even though they know that they need to do that, they find it very difficult to stick to it. So what is it? This is a question I've asked myself a lot of times before. What is it that when we have knowledge of something that is good or bad for us, we still don't seem to be able to act on this knowledge? So I've realized that actually knowledge does not lead to action. Your logical part of the brain, your logical part of your mind understands the reasoning, knows all the facts, and yet you can't actually follow on and do it. What is it? Well, the reason is quite simple. A lot of the things that we actually do and a lot of the things that we choose, we do it in a subconscious way. Eating is a habit. Obviously, it's a necessary habit, but it's a habit because we do it continuously. We do it several times a day. And it just becomes something which is, your choices become automatic because they are influenced by the way you've been brought up, by the associations that you make with some food, with comfort, is determined by advertising, is determined by how much in a hurry you are. Convenience is a big factor in how badly we eat at the moment. Everything for a fast sort of solution, a convenient food. So it is quite a complex issue. Some people come to, particularly with hypnotherapy, and they come and think, right, just hypnotize me and it'll be a very simple solution. And yes, hypnotherapy actually does help, but it's not a simple matter. And I'll explain why. Because when we look at the formula of how to lose weight, it's very simple. It's actually simplicity itself. If you eat more food than you consume with your daily activity, then the excess food is stored in your body in the form of fat. So the calories you don't consume in activity get stored in the form of fat. Okay, so to lose weight, very simple. Eat smaller amount than the energy you consume, and therefore the body will need to take the energy from the fat stores, and therefore the fat stores will decrease and you will lose weight. So perfect, that's just simple. And if you want to maintain it, once you get to the right level, then just consume the right amount of calories for the amount of calories that you actually use in your daily life. However, this very simple, very easy formula forgets something crucial, which is the fact that the ability to control what you eat and the quantity is influenced by biological factors, medical factors, psychological factors, and environmental factors, and therefore is different for everyone. And so what influences somebody's ability to take charge and to just follow a regime or to choose particular food? So you know somebody, for example, just to put the example of the diabetics, which is something that I studied at university, how difficult it is for diabetic people to follow their sort of diet when actually their life might depend on it. So it's why can't they do it? Well, the reason is because they already have a predisposition to choose some kind of foods. If you are if you have a genetic makeup that predisposes you to some conditions, you already need to think about that, and you already need to accommodate that issue. So it's not as simple as somebody that doesn't have any of those. So you may be genetically predisposed. However, the fact that you might be genetically predisposed doesn't mean that you're going to end up with a condition, because now we know more about how genes work, and it is well researched and it's been quite well established that the genes might be there, but they don't necessarily get expressed. So there are studies with twins that in different circumstances just get the gene to be expressed in one twin and not the other. So the fact that you may have a genetic predisposition doesn't mean that you have to end up with the condition. It means you have to be more careful, and you have to make sure that the environment you're in is not conducive for that gene to be expressed. Somebody put this thing about genes and the expression of the genes and whether they come into play or not quite simply and cleverly by saying that if you imagine that the genes are the musical instruments of an orchestra, the genes are the musical instruments, but the environment is the conductor. You and the environment are the conductor. So anyway, so that's about talking about genetic predispositions. There are also medical conditions that affect people's ability to control their weight, one of them being thyroid problems. Anybody who has problems with the thyroid gland will have difficulties, and they will need medication to control all the consequences of not having a functioning thyroid. And that one of the consequences is it's difficult to control their weight, and there's nothing to do with the amount they eat, and it's nothing to do with the willpower. Another medical condition that has an effect on weight gain is women that have polycystic ovaries. So if you have polycystic ovaries, one of the symptoms of it is being overweight. And yes, they can control with diet, with things, but it's a much bigger struggle for someone with these conditions than it is for a normal person. And you can't judge people by just looking at them and assuming, yeah, that's because you don't try hard enough. You don't know what the condition might be. So moving now on to other conditions the other factors that surprised me when I first learned about it. Children, the things that happen just around the time of birth, before or around the time of birth. Children who are born with very low birth weight, they're at a higher risk of becoming overweight later in life, and perhaps even developing diabetes. And why is this? Well, nature tries to prepare the baby for the world it's coming in, and if the baby hasn't received enough food in the placenta for whatever is, either the mother couldn't eat enough, or the mother had some issue, some health issue, that the food wasn't getting to the baby through the placenta, that the baby might have been born healthy or relatively healthy and quite well, but very low birth weight for the weeks of gestation. So that is a known factor, a known risk factor for developing problems later on, and it's nothing to do with willpower, because the body assumes that